Diablos voy a jugar con mi comida?
You know, seeing literal death just ranting in Spanish is way funnier than I ever thought it would be. The only downside is, I have absolutely no idea what he's saying here. My knowledge of Spanish is anything Dora the Explorer has taught me, and even that much is fleeting. Luckily, I can figure it out and more with today's sponsor, Babbel. Want to heavily focus on learning a second language or just want to learn a couple of phrases in case you ever go overseas for a while? Babbel, the app that teaches you how to speak, write, and listen in new languages, is right for you. Babbel gives you access to learn over 10 languages, including Spanish, German, Russian, and more. Regardless of your current level, motivation, or learning habits, you are given tools such as app-based lessons, games, podcasts, videos, and even live online virtual classes with top teachers through Babbel Live to comfortably learn how to handle real-world situations. On top of Babbel giving you cultural context for the languages you learn, the lessons being made by a team of over 100 language experts, and said lessons being voiced by native speakers, Babbel adapts to your personal goals and needs, so the time you spend learning truly matters. With Babbel, you only need to spend 10 minutes a day to complete a lesson, and you'll be ready to have conversations in your new language of choice in as little as 3 weeks. If you want to get Babbel, use the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off of your new language journey today. Nice, got that. What was I gonna do before this? Oh, I remember now. Maybe I should get on with the video. Puss in Boots, the 2011 Shrek spin-off movie focusing on the fan-favorite character Puss in Boots. It gives Puss an origin story about him attempting to clear his name years after having a falling out with his childhood friend, Humpty Dumpty. I'm gonna say this now, I saw The Last Wish before watching the 2011 movie, and while The Last Wish is incredibly good, so much so that it's one of the top 10 movies I'd have someone see to understand what I like in entertainment, the 2011 movie is surprisingly pretty good too. I honestly expected it to be a lot worse than it was, and it was interesting having the backwards perspective, seeing all of the little things that were referenced in the second movie. But yeah, Puss in Boots has some good movies. Too bad we're not talking about those here. I've covered a few Shrek games in the past, and I noticed that I haven't really done my annual Shrek video yet. Also because The Last Wish was literal perfection, but we're not talking about that. So yeah, I decided to cover the one Puss in Boots game that there is. Unfortunately, it's not for The Last Wish, but hey, times have changed with license-based games. Not everything gets one of those nowadays. But anyways, today I'm going to be looking at the Puss in Boots 2011 video game, and see if Puss in Boots has a pretty good video game as well as good movies. Also, 80% of you that are watching this are not subscribed currently. If you enjoy the video, you can change that. The events that happen in the story are mostly the same as the movie. I won't be going over the movie's plot, so I'm hoping you saw it already. But there are 3 story changes, all with varying degrees of how different they are from the movie and their overall significance. The first change is a slight one, where instead of Puss stopping a bull from running over someone, he pushes someone out of the way of a barrel, which is a lot less impactful. Stopping a bull from trampling someone would most likely save their life, or at least stop them from being severely injured, and is also a lot more impressive. Now, the second change is somehow both major and also kind of unimportant at the same time. It's an additional event that is exclusive to this game that takes place after the crew steals the golden egg-laying gooseling, and Humpty gets kidnapped because Puss and Kitty get distracted by balls of yarn that some bandits threw at them, and they have to go save him. During this, a Humpty dummy, haha, gets blown up with TNT, which Puss almost gets blown up by. For those who have seen the movie, you know that everything involved in this entire journey was orchestrated by Humpty. And no, nothing later deliberately says that this was not a part of that plan, meaning that in the game story, Humpty definitely tried to have Puss explode, which is pretty big, and the game kinda never mentions that. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's something very important to talk about. The last change, and this is the biggest one, is that instead of Humpty getting this pep talk from Puss about how he doesn't have to be evil and get back at the people of San Ricardo, which later results in him sacrificing himself for Puss and the gooseling to be saved, Humpty just suddenly feels bad and falls off the bell tower. No need for a good sense of character development or anything. My disappointment is immeasurable. Also, he doesn't die due to this, because he dies in the movie. He's still a golden egg within, which is also now ruined because he didn't make any form of sacrifice or anything, but he isn't dead, which is a very odd change. And then they don't explain what happens to him after that. I imagine that the townspeople would be very upset at him for the things he just did, but yeah, we don't get to hear anything about that. Needless to say, the movie does a much better job at the story. In the grand scheme of things, there aren't that many differences, but the differences that are there are either pointless or make the overall experience worse, and that's not what you want to have happen. Starting off with the main menu, it has some of the drawings from Puss and Humpty's childhood, which is a clever little way of including that. The cartoonish cutscenes also have a unique style choice. It's definitely a surprise to see because nothing Shrek or Puss in Boots wise does anything like this specifically, but it's one that I actually like. This could be a possible way of showing how Humpty's drawings have evolved since he got older, but that's probably me overanalyzing that, so whatever. Plus they transition between levels as well as into and out of in-game graphics pretty well. Very nice to keep the flow between them, even if the very obvious loading does get in the way. Speaking of the in-game graphics, I also like them quite a lot. The fact that a lot of scenes from the movie are reanimated and are done very well at replicating the scenes is a plus too. Voice work wise, while I was playing the game, I knew that not a single character had their original voice actor. However, I didn't expect to only see Andre Soglioso as the only one credited online. I legitimately couldn't find anyone else. Granted, the voice actors don't do bad jobs, but it is very obvious that some characters are not voiced by the same person. I must say though, that the music really did surprise me the most. I'm not gonna praise it as one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a license-based game or anything, but there are some really good songs here, and they feel very cinematic. Some songs even have multiple versions of them that play depending on where you are in a level, and those different versions tend to either build on, take away, or slightly change some aspects between them, creating a simple but very effective way of making a cohesive ambiance. The soundtrack is probably my favorite part about the entire game, if you couldn't tell. As you go through the game, you'll be switching between a variety of gameplay systems. There's the platforming segments that include climbing walls, balancing on tripwires and skinny planks, sliding along rails. You get the picture at this point. The next most common gameplay type is sword fighting. Swinging your sword at enemies deals damage while also building up your boot and claw meters. Once these are filled, you can use them to perform stronger attacks that knock enemies backwards. Said enemies can crash into various things such as the many environmental props and terrain, these wanted posters, and guitars. The guitars give Puss music notes, allowing for an instant kill attack that works on multiple enemies at once. Speaking of playing music, during the platforming segments, you'll sometimes come across a female cat that you can woo with said music. That's definitely a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud. Anyways, the last gameplay type is two different things that are kinda connected: stealth and statue mimicking. When stealthing around, you need to try and move towards an objective while making sure to not move whenever someone is cautious of your presence. With statue mimicking, you have to press a series of buttons in order for Puss to successfully hide himself behind an object. Also, there's two levels where you slide forward constantly. I didn't really know where else to put them in this segment, so here they are. Throughout the entire game, there is gold you can collect, which adds up to give you a bronze to gold ranking at the end of a level. The whole beanstalk area is incredibly cool. Most of the time you're sliding down the giant beanstalk, and it has a lot of similarity to a modern era Sonic level. Not to mention the view sometimes was really nice to look at. Despite being on rails most of the time, you actually have the most amount of control here in the entire game with the ability to go faster or slower. The stagecoach chase is kinda similar as well, with you being dragged by it the entire time. But the beanstalk area as a whole is easily my favorite part of the entire game, and it's not even close. Now allow me to explain why the beanstalk is the best level in the entire game. In case you haven't been able to tell by now, most of this game is incredibly automated. Holding forward on your analog stick is barely ever a thing. In fact, it is only a thing whenever you are climbing walls. That is the only time. Moving forward at any point is either automated or you have to press the X button, or whatever corresponds to that since I'm playing on the PS3 version. There are two levels where that automation makes sense. Notice how those levels were the only good thing I had to say about the gameplay? A majority of the rest of the time, it makes the game a boring series of QuickTime events. And though you are able to move left and right, it's only so you can get gold, which isn't even really worth it since you don't unlock anything for getting high amounts of gold aside from trophies. But if you want to talk boring, let's go over the combat. As I stated, I'm playing the PS3 version. That's because this version doesn't require me to use motion controls like the Xbox 360 version does. The PS3 version does have the option, but it is not required. However, even with using a regular controller, it still sucks because you can very much tell that the game is made around motion controls first. For attacking, you have to flick the right control stick, and admittedly that sounds bad, but the remaster for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword did the same thing and it works there. Because of that, I initially thought that you had to swipe in directions that an enemy was not blocking in order to hit them. That is not how it works at all. Any swipe you do deals damage, and it took me 60 seconds to realize that before going, what would happen if I treated combat as if I was role-playing as Silver Chariot? I then instantly found the objectively best way to play the game. Mashing your control stick gains you enough meter to instantly kill enemies and gets you through battles far quicker than individual swiping. Also, the music playing both in and out of combat as well as sneaking around, mashing is the best way to get through those as well. There is no semblance of incorrect timing, placement, or speed of anything. The tips the game gives you for combat are almost completely pointless because of this. Fighting bandits will fill your boost meter, which is basically saying don't do nothing. Stylish swordplay fills your claw meter faster. Me playing like I was in a Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi clash is supposed to be stylish, cause the meter hardly fills up otherwise. Use your sword to block or deflect bandit attacks. I didn't even bother mentioning that you could block or deflect attacks in the gameplay segment because I never had to block a single attack during the story mode. I honestly didn't know how blocking worked most of my time with the game, mainly because you don't get put into that situation often due to how long it takes before an enemy forces you to stop attacking. Even if the enemy survives long enough for this to happen, the game doesn't really teach you how to block. You kind of have to put the pieces together yourself, but that doesn't even matter because you could just use one of your 3 instant kill attacks during this time, which you will have at least one of those each and every time this happens, and you are out of that situation for free. I was not only never cut by a blade, but I never even had a blade swing at me. You have to actively try to lose at this game. The one time I ever blocked or deflected anything was during one of the challenge modes after I found out that there was a trophy for doing both of those actions, where I let the enemy attack me. By the way, did you realize that there are only 3 enemy types in the entire game? Not that that matters since they'll never be able to attack you anyways. One of them you see practically everywhere you go. The other is occasional, but they just have more health than the previous one. And the last one you only see once at like the beginning of the game. The fights are already boring when there's no stakes, but no variety makes that even worse. Not to mention, in addition to the whole automation thing, you can only move while fighting an enemy. You can't change between any target surrounding you, and you can't move if an enemy is not right in front of you. So at times, you just have to sit there and wait for an enemy to try and fight you before combat is continued. Even then, this movement is only for aiming your knockout skills at things in the environment. But that's a struggle in itself at times since it's not always clear how far to the left or right you can move. And enemies move around somewhat randomly, making it likely that you'll accidentally hit them into each other, which sometimes kills an enemy that got someone else knocked into them, but sometimes it won't get either of them killed. How did such a linearly designed and restricted system manage to be so inconsistent in practice? The sneaking segments I'm 50-50 on. A few of them are surprisingly really clever with their design because whenever you need to freeze in them actually makes sense for you to not get caught, such as this plant being sensitive to movement inside of its mouth and putting these pigs that wake up back to sleep before they end up making noise. Again, continuing with the trend that those 2 levels are the best part of the entire game. But then all of the other ones just have you standing right in front of someone and they just don't see you because the game says so. I really do wish that the stealth made more sense if it was going to be on rails like this. Like, if the statue segments were also a part of this, where you had to press a series of buttons in order to hide somewhere, I could at least overlook it more, but with the way it currently is, it's just disappointing. Also, I very vaguely implied this in the bad segment, but there are extra minigames you can play. However, they're basically glorified parts of the regular gameplay mechanics, even down to one of them just being this part of a level. I can't even get upset at the minigames for being lackluster because the base game doesn't offer much to have the minigames stand out at all. And you can tell that some kind of effort was put into making them feel different with the one glaring exception. But since the minigames are just the regular gameplay mechanics, they're kinda just there. I genuinely think that there was potential for this game to be really fun if it were not due to the game being so reliant on motion controls. A lot of the stuff in the game kinda, sorta, very vaguely resembles Uncharted's gameplay, without the guns obviously. The set pieces, the sequences, the combat ideas are all there for it, but so much of it is ruined by that one design decision that unfortunately affects pretty much everything gameplay wise. Personally, I'm just glad everything getting a license-based game has died out because I imagine The Last Wish would have definitely gotten a game, and it's possible that it would have been really good, but going off of this game, I wouldn't put full faith in that claim. With that being said, I can't really say that I hated my time with the game, just that there's other games that my time would have been spent better with. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. So first off, first sponsorship ever, let's go. I wanted to thank Babbel for sponsoring this video. I very much appreciate the opportunity. And again, if you want to try Babbel out, go in the description below and you'll get 60% off. But secondly, going back to Puss in Boots, oh my god, The Last Wish was so good, I wish I could talk about it more. If you have not seen it, please go see it. I don't care if you haven't seen the first one, I literally said in this video that I didn't either. That movie is a masterpiece. Unlike this game, which is surprising because I remember looking at some people's reception of the game and it was actually a lot higher than I expected it to be. Maybe I'm in the minority here. I really hope I'm not, but I probably am. But be sure to go down in the description below because that's where all of my social medias and my sponsorship are located. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more and tell all of your friends and family. But until the next video, take care.